How's everybody doing? A couple groups still getting stuff. About ready. Wait to see these triangles here. Now remember, after the 4 triangles presentation, we're just going to get that exam out of our way. It's just multiple choice. Should go real fast. I want you guys to get to the point where taking multiple choice exams is just no big deal. No worries. And then whenever you take those certification exams, they'll be easy. Speaking of which, Dr. Ford has certification exams available right now for less than normal. Not exactly sure. So if there is one that you were wanting to take, $25 when taken through the testing center. Normally they're $50. So if you have one that you didn't pass in the past that you would like to take again, let her know, because now is a good time to take it. We're going to be done with Unit 2, which is all of our beginning stuff, if statements, looping, things like that. And we're going to start with arrays. Arrays we'll start on Wednesday, and that's kind of why I wanted to get our unit exam out of the way today, so we would have Wednesday available before spring break. That way, you can work on the Rebel course over spring break if you want to. But I set the due date on this to be the Thursday after spring break, so you don't have to work on it if you don't want to. But if you want to keep yourself practiced up over spring break, you can have that available. After we are finished with our arrays, we'll start working with GUI stuff and get into our cool form space things and get away from the console-based apps finally. So let's look at some triangles. Now, how this one will be graded is kind of like, depends on a few things. So your group will come up here and present, and I'm going to ask you to come up to the front because this room just doesn't work well with people staying at their desks at all. So I'm going to ask you to come up to the front. You'll want our remote control your computer off of mine. I'll get out of the way here so that you'll have room. When your group presents, you're going to show us a couple of different applications. Hopefully, you have 1 or 2 that are different from each other, different solutions to show. We really just want to see one because we don't have all day. Right? Just try to get it done. And then after we've looked at those, we'll do our unit exam. So you are welcome to step outside for a little while and look at one of the kiosk computers if you want to do some practice quizzes or something like that for the unit exam if you weren't ready, and then come back in and take it. But we want to not have any practice exams or anything running in here while we have people taking the exam. I think that's about it for us for today. So let me get out of the way here. So you guys can take it over. That's not it.
Can you open it up on your solution?
That's our other thing, you guys. If you're having any TFS problems, be sure to stay and get with me to work them out after we're done. Okay, I'm just going to print that real fast.
This is not right. You don't have pluses, correct? Doesn't mean different. Does it not have access to where your is it, you don't have saved where all your files are? Because one thing it told me before I could actually put anything in here was tell it where your files are. Who wants to show this?
Your phone not working?
Mine won't load.
So Eric, did you do?
No, that's my file.
Oh, yeah.
Mine's probably not. His is 7 years. Mine's weird, but it still does what it wants to do. I tried to download the file on Canvas, but it's like I can view all the submissions. Yeah, so that's annoying. I had to get her to give me mine to go into Canvas and keep message me just go through it. So this is set up in this like
I don't know. Let's ask.
No. I'm not.
I have one saved in my one drive, so don't worry about that.
That's what I think. How is she supposed to create it? Because they keep on saying. Probably sometimes have it.
I can't even add it to my servers. I have my local pad. I'm trying it. I can host it up. My foundation server explorer, but I can't add it to
What says on the page.
I'm not working. You're just the latest one. There's just one in here. I'm looking at you said
Windows thing where sometimes sometimes.
just download it and submit it here.
Okay,
Like, for making a copy of your folder.
that's what I was going to say earlier. Sometimes it seems like making you jump through hoops and that.
Try and reselect it.
Whenever you get a job and you're talking about moving programs or websites or whatever into a live mode, it's always a really big deal, and there's always a lot of hoops to jump through. So it's just best for us to get used to having to do that early on. We know whenever we're done with the program, it's not just a matter of being done. There's some follow-up work that has to happen. Now, because we're on a unit exam and I'm making you do TFS at the same time, that adds an extra layer of stress for you guys, and I'm aware of that. Doing it intentionally, because that's how important it is that you get your stuff into TFS. And if I just think of a regular assignment, people will say, oh, it didn't work for this one, that's okay, I'll get it on the next one. And then we'll end up being at a unit exam before they really try to get it to work anyway. So this way we're just minimizing the torture, get it in there, get it working so that you guys all know how to use it before we have our assignment, put our dependent on it. All right, let's see. How about group one? Are you guys ready? Group one. Everybody's looking at me real weird. Who is that? I don't have it up there, do I? Okay, it is Interpol Jonathan, Craig, and Mark. You don't know who you are? We need to give you names.
Wait, question about the unit exam.
What?
Are we open notes again?
On your hand, yes.
Okay.
Good question. Keep forgetting that, and I want to go.
So stay after. Figure it out.
Yes, to stay after, and we'll be able to figure it out. We will figure it out.
I can't get it. I found a way to have things. It don't work.
Okay, group, what we're gonna do is that computer that you want to project, go ahead and use it to
If we do mine, mine requires input,
control
so it's kind of hard to do.
share your screen. And when you, once you share your screen in the options, there's a drop down, you can say remote control, and then you got to be able to remote control that machine from up there. Because we want you all up in front, so we can see.
Browser. That would have been a good idea.
I tried the other way. So what I do here, just really quick, add items to folder.
Yeah.
And then I selected the folder. So I had to go up. I select the folder. Next, select all the files. But now that's a lot more files. I just leave it out there and I look up. Wait,
My other option, I wondered if you could have copied, like gone into your folders, copied, make a new entire, make it look like an download directory program, and then maybe put Could you not just upload the entire folder?
Did you get your TFS? I found a way around that.
Okay, well, good morning. I'm Randy. Okay, so funny thing that we did is, so we were kind of working on this project, and we primarily split two different ways on how we did the project. So Martin and I tried to match the example as closely as possible when it came to proportions. As you notice that, like on the website itself, the triangles were very elongated. Of course, that could just be like the font size or something, but we were trying to replicate it as closely as possible. And then Greg and John went with a individual internal loop here, which just actually alternated with the asterisk placement there. Now, the main reason that causes the difference is Martin and I had an additional loop right prior to this one that would add a space between each line of asterisk. So it was elongated, much like the actual website itself. Now, I don't know if that was a base requirement or just something that we took creative liberty on as far as reaching out to. Now, this is Martin's, not Martin's code, this is Greg's code, as far as how he did it. And so both of the methods employed here are very, very similar. Obviously, we employ nested loops here. Now, as far as Greg's here, it's just missing that extra internal nested loop that would go right prior to the actual placement of the star. That would add the additional spaces. If you want to take a moment to explain the difference between the, I guess, like when it goes from 1 star to 2 stars, and so on and so forth to each.
So basically I have my counter set to 10, which is the number of stars, and just two integer variables, I and j, for the loops. And I just, this is the up triangle. I did that, this is pointing out. And the upside down one is the one pointing down. So this is the first for loop is for the row. And so it kind of, so if I'm thinking about this right, this will print out the row and then the column with a star, and so it's just kind of moving one by one by one by one by one, and printing out the star next to each other. I originally had a right line there. That didn't work because I just printed out a bunch of lines underneath each other. It took me a while to kind of figure that one out. That right is the important part. And then for the upside down triangle, I set the I integer equal to the number of stars, so that way I could get the longest part and then go down. I originally just had this the opposite, where I would just put the number star in there. Number of stars equal to 10, but I realized that that reset the counter each and every time. And I couldn't give my final triangle to print out because there was literally 0 for the counter. But yeah.
Yeah, as far as between the two halves of the group, the employment of the sentinel value, or in this case, the num star counter up there that's up to 10, we both employed that. As far as how the loops are set up, also identical, of course, and I imagine a lot of the ones in the room are. Now, it was mainly just the spacing there. Now, the cool thing here is, it's that one thing that really kind of like racked our brains, especially when we're trying to get this done, is how to do the upside down star. You really have to kind of like bend over backwards, kind of think about it differently, which is really kind of cool because it forced us to be very logical about how it worked instead of just trying to like program it as we see it. You had to kind of deduce whether or not the loop would work in your favor or not. Oftentimes, Martin and I had this issue where it would just be printing lines forever, and like it would never actually stop. And or what it would do is it would just do like 10, 1, 10, 1, 10, 1, and yeah, we were tired, but we figured it out.
I just print out a rectangle.
Yeah, that was always fun. I get a 10 by 10, and of course it was like a rectangle with the spacing that we had. Yeah, that's our project.
Questions?
Questions, comments, concerns?
Can you run it?
This one's having issues with like the program files, like because we had to create a completely new one. I mean, it does work.
Asking me to attach. Don't understand.
Yeah, so it's not giving us the option to run it, but it's attached instead. So I think we'll have to copy it to a new Visual Studio file altogether. But it does work. That could be, yeah.
I don't know.
I'm just, like, we're also kind of speculating as to why, because like instead of the run here, it's saying attached. So
Yeah,
it might be just- yeah.
I was
Yes.
gonna ask if you map the TFS files a little bit.
Did you?
I did.
Yeah.
It says they were, so let's go to Source Control Explorer. Who's driving for this?
Right.
Something's gotta run. There's two guys. It should be seeing this. It looks like everything is up to date. So if you click on your triangle, you should go there, and then you click on triangle out. And this is our solution file. So you could try double clicking the CS project file over there.
Was that
And
auto
then go to
generated?
your, go ahead and click OK to change the framework. If you guys move back and forth from home to school, you might have some differences like that in framework, which should be okay. Now that you've done that, notice how if you go red, check marks over, explore like everything that's updated. So let's go back to the triangle.cs file and see if you can.
Yeah, that's
So
an issue.
don't
I
open
had.
it from there. Open it from Solution Explorer. You don't want to open one that's in CFS. Close that. Remember where you're working. You just opened it from here. So now you got to go to Solution Explorer. Solution Explorer, now you can double click on your file. So notice how if I double click on it from Team Explorer, I'm not opening it from within the project. I might be, but I might not. So now let's see if we can run it. So now that it's properly opened, we can use the start button program. Right.
Michelle, is stop motion.
Please.
Yeah. That's really
Too
possible.
many stars.
So if anybody else is having something like that, make sure that You open using source control explorer, but then you double click on your file using source code explorer, solution explorer. You're always using solution explorer, solution explorer, solution explorer, solution explorer. Always go there to navigate your solution, and it'll just make your life so much better.
And for those that have Visual Studio downloaded at home that's not 2018, it's the 2019 version, you'll have to go through that conversion process whenever you come here, because it looks like a lot of the computers still have the 2018 version. So that's something that caused an issue for John and I today whenever we were trying to pull it up. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, cool.
Here, today's procedure is cold, jam, free, and air.
Okay. So this program we want to show. You did working? Nope. Nope. Well, it's working, but not here. Yours working, so we could show yours and get mine. Okay.
Which one? You want to show mine or yours?
Okay. All right. Do we want to show one with the X on the box? Or not? She, yeah, like that. She asked for something like that.
That's what I have.
You want to do that? Or you want to show yours?
Mine's not gonna look like the just triangles. Mine has a lot of user input.
Okay. It's different.
I'll show mine. Or, how do I?
I mean, it's also you're done. You go to the search.
I guess I'm almost normally launched it.
I've been there, but
I have like 3 classes that use Zoom.
Well, do you have a student or an employee account? An employee account. They think that that's what it is with that computer. I didn't think you were. No, he's not an employee. Teacher.
Once I
you want to go up there and I go.
Control that computer.
Okay, or we must even use whiteboard.
That's right. At IT. That control was
That's disabled.
Let's just say what
I have not sent the help desk out.
okay, that works. Okay.
on a person.
What's the time? All right. All right, guys. Well, we're group 2, and we're running mine because mine's the only one working currently. Well, that
Ours are working. Yours get
attached. Do you guys have a attached problem?
No one works.
Oh, mine works too. Well, never mind that second. Well, mine's different, so we're going with that one. Looking at all 3 of theirs, they have their basic like they did. They have just triangles, like the first triangle, the second triangle, pushed after each other. I didn't think of that. I thought of user input first. So all of mine is asking. Mine would be asking for the do you want to make a triangle? Do you want to go up or down? And then ask that. And when we walked in here, he gave me the idea of actually asking for an input of how big a triangle. I just did mine looks exactly like theirs did for getting the up and down triangle. Here's the up one. I didn't put comments. Here's the down one. It's just from the main. That's the text input. You want to do it around. So mine has a lot of input. Mine's not exactly like it, so I can just put it start up. Then you want to do another one, yes. Down. I just did a lot of for loops, a lot of user input. That was what mine was different from theirs. I had the idea of getting an user input for how big you want it to go. That's what Aaron did over here. And that was something I was working on before we started, but I didn't finish it.
Any questions, comments, concerns, or fish?
Fish is very important.
Salmon. Good choice.
Thank you, Frank.
You want to see the output, or you just want to see the class?
Do you guys use the sectional value? Whatever you're asking, where do you want?
He used a hard-coded value.
Like just like I was saying, like just as we were walking in, I was looking at his code, and he has an input value for how big he wanted, and I was working on that, but I didn't get done.
Yeah, so for the up one, the sectional value is the hard-coded value. And for the down one, he initialized his I as a hard-coded value and set the sectional to 0.
Any more fish?
Good job. We have Becca,
20 milliseconds.
Don, Sebastian, Matt, and Rico.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Kind of work kind of the basic nested for them.
Yeah.
So this one's the top one. This one makes a lot of fun. And it does the same thing. We also forgot the space too as well. Between each triangle, so it all just kind of combines. Yeah.
We all did the same, or we all used the same nested for loops, and then I think we all agreed that, like, just the main technical hurdle was really just like using TFS like as a whole and trying to get it to open like while we were here.
I also point out same thing now. And so we run it. Which gives us
Are you guys finding issues with connecting in 2019? I know it's a little different.
No, it's really the same thing. I found
It is
connecting.
similar.
The only thing that's different is obviously the .NET framework. You gotta update it or whatever. So you gotta make sure you do that.
The biggest takeaway I have is the order that you put it in, the offerings. Because a lot of times you got one long asterisk going in a column or a row, or just it won't show up. A lot of testing.
This is a good one. Good one.
Yeah, I did the same thing, like mixing up rows and columns, or like if you type just something wrong, like we just get a line of triangles. I mean, of asterisks and like no triangle, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, same thing. That's about it.
I love people, but not me.
Yeah, I don't imagine builders.
Not as long as the last four sections, but it was for me. This is 73 plus 56.
What we did last
143. So you know, if there's code, like specific code, it doesn't match the format that is, you just select that stuff. Browser. Yeah. So if there is a snippet of code, select the question. Okay, you select. There's a snippet of code on the test. Select the question. Because my code, I got formatted, it's easier to do that. Like questions, it said use what storage, or something like that. Which lessons are it's exam 2. Two possible questions. And quiz it if you want to study. Questions. Hopefully, all those questions are. You're not allowed to be. You're on it, tell you that. Oh, there. Exam 2. I saw that. Yeah, I saw it. I was not sure. I didn't know. I tried it. Everything was like I thought we were going to did it. So, look how great. Do you have a OneDrive? Or I do. I just love the good side. I for some reason, I just like always keep them inside for so long that I like but it keeps on
Remember your manners if you're getting graded for being a good asset too. Like probably work for the
All right, so for my triangle generator, I focused a lot more on user input and diversity for like all the different shapes and triangles that you can generate. So for my main class, I create 4 triangles using creating new triangle objects in my triangle.cs class. I put all of them. There is something I can drag this up. Like Oh, here.
Okay, so touch screen doesn't work.
Oh, here we go. Okay, I'll just do it. I'll talk about it from over here. Okay, so inside of my main program loop, I loop through this code for each triangle that we're creating. So in this case, we're creating 4 different triangles. So this for loop will loop through the triangles.length, which is equal to 4. So it'll loop through 4 times. And then I have user input that will get the top parameter for the triangle with this try parse statement, which will catch all errors that there's no invalid input that's being passed to the triangle, which will crash the program. And I do that twice for both the top and the bottom. And Now I check to see if the top and the bottom parameters are the exact same. So say the user wanted the top parameter of the triangle to be 5 and the bottom parameter of the triangle to also be 5, then that would create a rectangle. And the way that my code processes how to print things to the screen, whenever it tries to print out a triangle or a rectangle, since the top and the bottom are the same, it'll just look through once and break it completely. So I have to catch that and make sure that it gets a third parameter, the height. So that's what this third try-parse statement does. It gets the height of a rectangle if the user inputs one. And then what I do, just for more user customability, I have a method or two methods called shade in and shade out. And what that does is that'll get the gets the triangle, like, you know how whenever you print it out, it's like a solid triangle with all the stuff in it. Well, with this one, you can either choose to shade it in completely or shade it out so that it just draws the outline and there's a bunch of blank space in it. And then I'll loop through the array again, and it'll get each triangle and then call its toString method, which will print it out to the console with this write line. And then after it draws all of the 4 triangles to the screen, it asks the user if they want to create more triangles. And if they choose yes, it'll continue the loop. And if they choose anything else, it'll break the loop. It'll bring them down to the end of program prompt, which will end the program. So then inside of my triangle CS class, I have all my class variables, constructor, which will by default, it sets the filled in status of the triangle. So whether or not it's filled in or out, just sets it equal to true, just in case something goes wrong. It's just a catcher. I don't really think it's possible for something to go wrong, but just in case somehow it does, it catches it. And then I have the set bounds method, which it's whenever the user enters the input, it'll call this set bounds method, which sets this dot top equal to top or this dot bottom equal to bottom. And I have the same thing for if the user enters a rectangle, except this time the only thing it does differently is it'll also set the height of the rectangle. My shade in, shade out. And then I'll go down to my toString method, which what this does is it's basically checking whether to see if the triangle is a going top to bottom or bottom to top triangle. So if the top is greater than the bottom, so if the triangle's decreasing, if it's getting shorter as it goes down, then it's going to be a decrementing for loop, which is where you set the I instance equal to the top, so the biggest length, and then it'll just decrease until it gets to the bottom length. And then the same thing for the bottom, so except it's an increasing for loop, incrementing, I guess. And then I have another for loop that catches rectangles, which what this does is it gets the outlines for all of that. So then actually drawing the rectangles to the screen, or the triangles to the screen, I use my get triangle outline class or method. And what this does is it checks to see if it's filled in, and if it is filled in, or if it's not filled in, that's what this exclamation point does. Checks to see if the triangle or shape is not filled in. It checks to see if the width is 1, or the width is greater than 1, then it'll set the blank space in between. So basically, this is really confusing. So it gets the length of the little part of the triangle that you're on, and then if the triangle is not filled in, so therefore there's blank space, this is calculating the blank space in between the two outlines of the triangle. So it does the same thing for the top and the bottom, and then for the outline, it'll draw, you can see it draws the first part or the outline of it, and then it'll draw the blank space in between it with this blank space, and then it draws the last part of it. And that's about it. So yeah, what happens when you run it. All right, so what is the top length of triangle 1? I'm gonna say 1, 10, and then do you want to fill in your shape? For this one, I'll say no, I don't want to fill in the shape. Top length of triangle 2, I'll say 10, then 1, and then you want to fill in your shape. I'll say yes for this one, so I'll fill in the shape. What is the top length of triangle 2? This time I'll draw a rectangle and see what happens. So I want it to be 7 by 7, and then it says, the height of rectangles cannot be inferred. Please enter the height of the rectangle. So now I'm going to say, we'll say 10. Then I'll ask you, do you want to fill in the shape? I'll say no. And then what is the top length of triangle 4? This time I'll say 2 and 12. And I'll fill in the shape. So what it does is it'll get all the stuff. So we'll say triangle 1, top length is 1. As you can see, it's 1. Bottom length 10. 10. And we told it not to fill in the shape. So it drew that shape, drew all the shapes. And then this is our rectangle catch. Then I'll say, do you want to create more triangles? In this case, I'll just say no. So clear the console, and I'll say, thank you for using the triangle generator. Press any key to exit. And close it. There you go.
So that all we have all of different members have different call a different way of doing this. So like Trace in just MATLAB more like from measurements, make everything look like on this, and something like me I did like create class element class view everything from on the triangle like a basic line and then draw a triangle forward or backward for the methods. And then from the class I build, I try to build the method to get create new objects for a triangle and then get the property to get the method just that way. And I think check out Chase want to share because he really well and also he want to like we have to show the GFS but he know why it didn't work now.
Mine was similar to what you guys showed, but it doesn't run at all for some reason. I can try.
And ask
Yeah.
So what would you say was the most difficult? I mean, like obviously,
Yeah.
actually the other groups, this was a lot more in depth. But what would you say was the hardest part?
The hardest part was definitely figuring out the for loop, like incrementing and decrementing parts, like how you guys said that. How would you know if like the triangle was like decrementing like top to bottom, like just setting that I instance to the length, like I had just always I would be equal to 0, and you couldn't decrease that. So it was just, that was a big technical hurdle for my part. I could have just made everything negative, yeah. That would have been fun.
Start making the triangle the other way.
Okay.
Those are applications as an audience.
You should have had a print circle. If somebody like puts in like rectangle,
Like if I copy and paste,
it's just like you're an idiot.
new
You don't deserve the try.
So go to Team Explorer and let's see if we can get it back.
But the circle's so big that it feels like
It just crashes the computer.
Go to your CIS150
Delete system 32.
If you don't enter a triangle, it just crashes and completely deletes everything.
all files today. Okay, so now your triangle. Except folder.
You have one more
Yeah,
chance.
you're missing all sorts of stuff underneath. Notice how it only has your CS project file in your .cs file. It doesn't have any of the rest of the solution. Because you will see it. So you right click on that solution.
I'm pretty sure that, like, if you delete it just on your own, like, your computer stops.
If you notice, he only has his CSPROG file and his .cs file on TFS. That is not enough on the project to test it. So he can do some cutting and pasting and hacking and get it back together. But that's not what I do when I test things. I need them to be loaded at the solution level, not at the project level, not below the solution. make sure you're on the solution. Do I sound like a real pain in the ass? Is anybody listening? No. Make sure you're on the solution when you check in. So we don't have half checked in projects. You want to be like that guy at Mutual of Omaha, right?
If I copy and paste code into a new project,
If you double click the CS proj file, does it try to recreate things for you? They know. You don't want
Yeah.
Okay. So now that's just mad about .NET Core, so that's okay, we might be able to take care of that. So now, it sort of tried to recreate it for us. Notice how we did some of the word, we do see that kind of indicates now, but they kind of have that yellow one.
It's always the best.
So
Just
on your
mess it.
project, or project, right click on it, go to properties. You guys might have to do this a lot since we're looking at different versions of Visual Studio. See where the target framework is blank? Choose that target framework drop down and choose the newest one that's available on our machine. And now you can close that property screen if you notice it's the tab furthest over.
See.
Now let's see if we can go back to Solution Explorer. Now let's see. Am I ready?
Hey.
You get it. We just have to be smarter than it is with some of the car.
Separated into like
So
chunks.
as far as for individual stuff, it's like smarter to just set the target.
I just got
Yeah.
and then I have outside of the main
If
class.
you want to do that, but it's also the
Features and then I'll break it
That's
down.
different
It's just
framework.
printing
We
on
shouldn't run into any issues back and forth because we're not doing any like mobile app development or something like that. If we were doing that, then we might run into trouble. But with our apps, we should be okay. So now we didn't get to see its awesomeness. You got it. He's like, well, I got it. Okay, let's see this awesomeness. What do you got here?
all right, so I got the variable that sets the size of the triangle. So if I change it to 5. Change the size to the for some reason I couldn't get for the last 3 triangles, I couldn't get the variable J to register or whatever, so I just had to put this in, and it made it worse because if I take it out, it will bring an error saying that J doesn't exist or whatever. I don't know. I messed with it. See how
So go back up. Should we? What is J4? Could you say K less than or equal to I, since I was your outer?
yeah, I was having trouble.
Oh, okay. So I see you just had to get another variable.
Yeah. And then to get the spaces in between the triangles, I just put a right line between each one.
Perfect.
So yeah. That's about it.
Let's give them a hand. I'm going to try to take over here. And on Windows, whenever we're working with something like TFS, you know, behind the scenes, Windows 10 will just pop up like with a login screen for you every once in a while, and then it just magically keeps this information. Well, if it's not right, you can be in trouble. So there are some things we can do. So like, I don't know if we can access this utility here at school, but you'll be able to access it at home. And I know I've had to use it a couple of times to get my credentials cleared when I've been working with TFS.
So we can go to control panel, user accounts, manage your network passwords. And I have a feeling we won't be able to do it here, but we'll see. So let's see, maybe manage web credentials. Let's see if it's closed. Now, I've not logged on CFS on this machine, so you might be able to tell more looking at yours. But when you are at home, you'll, because you're administrating probably of your computer, you'll have more access to these facilities. And of course, just like other Windows utilities, they change all the time. But what I would do is find my Windows credentials down here, and somewhere in this list, I'm going to see something about TFS. And I would be able to remove that stored credential. And then the next time I try to access TFS, it will be forced to display that login screen to me again to give me a chance to log in properly. So if something is messed up and you're not being able to get that screen back, this is the way to do it. Now I can post this link. I don't have Discord. So I know we don't like to get into those kind of facilities. Okay. Or we do like to. Sometimes we just like to. Okay, I will get that in. So now I put grades in, and I would have liked to have done more grading. I had to go to a meeting Saturday with food, so Sunday I didn't eat anything. So I didn't update like I was planning. But everybody's grades are fantastic, for too much. So keep up the good work. Everything is looking really, really good. If you have a rebel that you're missing parts of or pieces of, or you're having trouble with from way back, take a look at it again, see if it's easy now. Also, if it's not, let me know so that we can work through it and get you that experience, because it's important to have it all as we go. It is 9:03. Let's run that. But let's take until 9:10 to update notes, and then we'll start that exam. So 9:10.
Yeah, why had 110s in English bonds? And I can't remember which was. This is my number 50 was. The access code for the examination.
Are we gonna start the quiz today or we're gonna wait till next time?
Nope, we're gonna start in just a minute. I have one more minute left on my line. You guys have time for updating your notes. Your notes are updated good. You are something.
This one's not.
That's you. Okay, the exams access code is CUN2. Remember, only refer to your notes. If you don't know the answer, trust yourself. It's all lowercase. All lowercase. That's you. That's you. Oh, you guys in here making all this noise. Gesundheit, Gesundheit, Gesundheit.